The regular season is over. The playoffs are here. We'll dive deep into the Nuggets overtime loss to the Lake. We're not going to talk about that game at all. We are going to talk about everything else, though. This is Locked On Nuggets. Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. My name is Matt Moore.
Hold up, I got to interrupt you even before we get started. We have some breaking news here. Wayne Ellington has just tweeted, "When I see you, I'm putting my hands on you, Facu Campazzo." So there you go. Facu, of course, gets thrown out tonight for a two-handed shove, which, honest to God, was like a little bit of a crazy move. Like, he just lost his cool at the official and took it out. I didn't realize it was Wayne Ellington. I thought it was THT, but I guess I got that wrong on Wayne Ellington. And then unceremoniously was tossed from the game. So Wayne Ellington calling him out. First of all, like Wayne Ellington, I understand him. Like, this was a pretty bad hit, like Facu, it was almost Jokic on Markieff Morris-esque. But like, how does the league handle when a player threatens somebody? I mean, this is unambiguous. When I see you, I'm putting my hands on you.
They'll fine him. That's it. They'll fine him.
Is he under contract?
I think so.
I guess you are. I guess technically you're under contract no matter what till July 1st, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's happened before. It won't be a big deal. I'm sure the Morris twins have done it. So, yeah. Well, that game happened. Spoiler alert for those of you, we're not going to break down the Nuggets loss to the Lakers in overtime. Good on Austin Reeves. Malone was furious after the game. 60-second post-game interview. This game didn't matter. If you wanted to win the game, you should play your guys. Like, what are we doing here? Like,
yeah,
this game doesn't matter. It just doesn't. They could win, they could lose. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So we're not going to break that down. Here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about the regular season and what this was like. Oh boy. Covering this team this season, kind of what we learned about the squad. And that's going to be our first segment. Second segment, we're going to talk about roster decisions and the playoff rotation. We'll get into our discussion of Devon Reed and what we think about the decision not to convert his two-way contract. We'll talk about what we think the playoff rotation is going to look like, the Jamal Murray situation, all of that in the second segment. Third segment, we will do our first thoughts on the Golden State Warriors series in the first round of the NBA playoffs. We are going to have 5 days to do coverage of the Warriors series. So I need time to process this, because my only real takeaway is they better not leave Kevon Looney in one-on-one coverage with Nikola Jokic, because I've been watching that all day because I'm working on the Jokic MVP thing. We'll do a lot more this week on the Warriors, but we'll give you our first thoughts in that last segment. So let's start here. Adam, would you say that this is the most frustrating season that you have ever covered the Denver Nuggets?
I mean, it's frustrating probably, but only it's not even anybody's fault. It's just the nature of what was happening with the season. Expectations are everything, and sort of hopes and is everything, because obviously the Nuggets have been worse than they were this year, and they even, they outperformed their Vegas line or what have you. But just what was frustrating about it was the hope for it to have a resolution, and it just doesn't feel like it has one. So yeah, I'd say it probably was the more frustrating is not the right word, but just sort of the one of the least fun, I guess.
How do you make bleh into an adjective?
Yeah,
is what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Ryan and I have talked about a lot, and I think what I've kind of come to is the realization that they never hit their stride. Not once. They managed to win enough games, but there wasn't a stretch of basketball where you go the Nuggets are really good. Not once did that ever happen. And part of that was they would get into kind of a comfort zone, and then somebody would get hurt and they would set them back, or they would get into kind of a rhythm, and then the bench would blow up, or they get into a rhythm with the bench, and then the starters would have a struggle. They never got everybody rolling at the same time. And a lot of that's because it would help if you're trying to find answers in these times to have two more guys that could, go through and populate it. It was a really weird season for me, and it's what I've really struggled the entire season with, is trying to reconcile their record, their advanced metrics, which don't say that they're a great team. Like, they got a worse SRS than the Wolves, right? Doesn't say that they're a great team, but that they're a good team, with how it felt watching them and how vulnerable and inept the rest of the team outside of Jokic could feel at times. I do wonder for this for you. Will you remember more Jokic's greatness this season, or the disappointing fashion of watching the team as a whole, or are those two things just intricately tied together?
I'm curious how I'll look back on this season. I mean, some of it probably depends a little on what the postseason looks like. I think I'll first and foremost remember this, especially if Jokic does win the MVP. I'll remember it as his second MVP season. I'll remember it as the best season to date. But secondly, it'll be tied to the fact that it came in such a just directionless sort of feeling season, that purgatory season.
Yeah, this is a good comment from Hurricane, who's always in here, and he says that he's a Nuggets and Avs season ticket holder. And he says when he goes to watch the Avs, even though they've had injuries, that it feels like he's watching the Avs. And when he goes to watch the Nuggets, he doesn't feel like he's watching the Nuggets.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's right though. That's what I'm getting at. Is this doesn't feel like a success or failure for the Nuggets, because it doesn't feel like the Nuggets. It just feels like a placeholder of the Nuggets.
Yeah, and I think that's and honestly, like, that's a bummer for everyone. Like, it feels,
Totally.
because that's part of it. It feels like it's unfair. Also, like, I always think of the other guys. This is just like, I don't know why I'm wired this way. When the Anthony Davis, LeBron, or Anthony Davis LA situation was playing out, like, the thing I was really focused on is I was like, this sucks for Drew Holiday. Like, this sucks for all the other guys that are playing. When there's a trade demand, I'm always like, what about the other guys that are stuck there? When James Harden pulled that in Houston, I was like, Eric Gordon went there to win a championship.
Yeah, he just stuck. Yeah, he's the casualty of it all.
And it feels a lot like, the Nuggets, in part, I think all those guys, like, it's funny because just like all the guys want more of a role. Like, most players in the NBA want a bigger role. And even like Monte's a good example of this, right? Like, you don't come out of the season being like, wow, Monte Morris is a lot better than we thought he was. We're basically just like, yeah, Monte's exactly what we thought he was. Like, a really, really, really good backup point guard.
Yeah, he had a really good year.
I mean, regular season.
Yeah, he had a really good season.
But we're not like, oh man, he should start for somebody.
Right. This season, one time I remember this, going camping, and it's like, you think you know where this place is. You're like, okay, it's a long drive, but when we get there, we'll have the camping trailer or whatever. And you go and you can't find the spot. Like, the whole drive up, you're having a decent time, but you're like, it's a long drive, but when we get there, the payoff, it's that's the payoff. You can never find the spot. You're like, at a certain realization, you're like, we're actually never going to reach that place.
We're not going to find it.
Some other place that's like not good. We're just going to have to do this in the dark. That's kind of how the season was. Is you think like, we have to suffer through this thing to get to the payoff at the end, and then when the payoff never arrived, you're like, man. So we just drove.
Yeah, and so much of that was because we thought that they were going to get whole, and they never got whole. I like this.
I watched Jamal Murray tonight.
What'd you think?
He did not look like he was in very good shape. He was doing the one-on-one drill. First of all, he looked fantastic. Like, I watched him go one-on-one against all the Nuggets coaches, their player development coaches, and like, they couldn't guard it. It's funny because he's an NBA player. The guys that the coaches are not NBA players. Some of them are old, but still, like, they're good athletes. There's some guys on there that can really move. They have no chance against Jamal. In fact, some of them were like laughing because they were going full speed trying to stop him one after the other. Like, they get rest, but he doesn't. And none of them could get a stop on him no matter what. His footwork was perfect. His touch was perfect. His quickness was all there. The only thing was he looked a little tired. I mean, he got worn down like kind of quicker than I would have expected. And it made me think, if he was in a playoff series, if he were to come back and play, he's probably looking at 5-minute stints early on, because that's all the intensity he can sort of handle. But physically, he looked great. He looked dominant, and he looked locked in. Like, he was very focused for his workout.
I thought the Thursday game, when he warmed up, I thought that was the closest I've ever seen him to looking. He looked light.
Oh, he looked really thin.
Yeah. Well, not physically. I mean, like, the fadeaway jumper, like, he was like gliding for dunks, and he hasn't done that in months.
Yep. Yep.
So like he's obviously like close. He's just not close enough, and
He
we'll get to the implications of
it is
that.
important though, because he did look thin. Like I thought he looked puffy and slow and stuff, but he looked like really jittery and quick and just skinny. Like you look at him and you're like, oh yeah, that guy has. He looks honestly like he's playing.
Yeah. Final thing, kind of before we go to break here, is I do want to talk about this comment from Aaron. It was tough watching the bench below games early in the season against playoff teams when the starters were competing. I do kind of feel like that was part of it. Was the starters were so good the first half of the year,
Yeah,
and
you're
they just
right.
had to play so many damn minutes because the bench was so god awful, and that had accumulated. I learned a lot this season about what can happen when you are trying to when you can't just be like, well, we're gonna lose. Like you have to be
Yeah.
like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to play the starters because we can't fall 10 games under 500. Like when you don't have that kind of cushion, and you're like, no, if we don't like if we're 10 games under 500 at All Star, we're sunk. If we're 5 games under 500 at All
Right.
Star, we're done. Like we don't have the talent, right? So it's like you have enough talent to win 48 games, but to do that, you have to cost yourself the long term hope. And I thought that that was like I really learned something about that this season.
And it's along those same lines, similar to last year, the Nuggets got off to a slow start, and because of that, I think it's sort of like it created what the season was going to feel like. Because what did they have, that losing streak, like 6-game losing streak early on? And yeah, it was a 6-game losing streak. I'm looking at it here. Early in the year, they fell to 9-10, and just that set the tone for the season. Like, oh, you're gonna have to play catch up. If you didn't have that, and you get off to a good start, maybe a lot of this didn't feel that way, but it just kind of felt like the Nuggets were behind the 8 ball from the get go, and then the whole year you're just kind of playing where every game felt so heavy.
Yeah. Well, that's the wrap up for a 48 win season in which they went over their win total and secured the 6th seed in the Western Conference. I'm never gonna get over how weird this is, and it's like it all makes sense to me at this point. Like it makes sense. It's just in my brain. I'm like, but all the numbers are good, and it's like, yeah, but sometimes there's stuff that goes
Do you,
beyond.
do you think this weird dumb game tonight, which was the perfect way to end the season, going into overtime and a meaningless game? Do you feel like the fact that Denver collapsed and lost this one to a god awful Lakers team like carries any Malone stormed into the post game, spoke for 30 seconds, and then stormed out. Like, do you think it carries any negative momentum into the season as they prepare? Or
We'll
the
answer that
week?
question and more when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I've got to tell you about Built Bar. That's right, it's Built Bar time. So the one thing that I wished in life was for a protein infused marshmallow, and Built Bar gave it to me. They fulfilled my life's dream, which was to eat a protein filled marshmallow covered in 100% chocolate. They are covered in 100% chocolate. The churro one is absolutely incredible. The coconut marshmallow one is good. The banana cream pie one is surprisingly great. They're all really, really good. And they're all covered in 100% real chocolate, but they're low calorie and high protein. You get to replace all those candy bars with a Built Bar, and you're going to be way better off. Most Built Bars have got just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You got mint brownie, coconut almond on the regular bars, and new this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. New flavors coming out all the time. Check them out at the website, built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Make your second listen Locked On now. It's got nightly recaps of all the NBA games from your local experts. Check it out wherever you get podcasts. It's Locked On now. Okay, Adam. So you asked the question before the break of, does this crappy overtime loss to the G League South Bay Lakers versus the Grand Rapids Gold, does that like carry momentum into the playoffs? My answer is no. I just don't really like. If you had tried to win this game, then sure, but they
Yeah,
didn't.
true. Yeah,
Like
it's true.
they didn't. Like if they played the starters and were like, we really want to get like good momentum. And the other thing I'd say is if you look at like, oh man, going into the playoffs with an overtime loss to a bad Lakers team is like a bad omen. You know what's a worse omen? Playing your starters in a blowout win over the Spurs and Luka Doncic hurts his calf. That's a worse
Yeah,
outcome.
yeah, it definitely
Uh,
is. My
so
God.
I mean, yeah, like look, Malone. Here's what was funny is I knew Malone. Like I wasn't at the arena. I knew Malone was going to be mad. I was like, he's going to lose his mind over this. They blew a lead. They collapsed. They didn't get stops. They had a turnover to allow the bucket. Like all of these things because coaches care way, way more about how the team they're responsible for plays than the outcome. And I will say this is very much a non-former player thing. This is my take here. Doc Rivers would not care. Would not care. Steve Kerr would not care about this game. Guys that have played, I think that they're wired differently than non-player coaches.
Yeah,
Malone is
you're probably right.
always
That's a good point. That's a really good
Malone's
point.
always going to care no matter. This is his whole thing with the excuses thing is I got the guys I got and it's my job to get them to win. No matter who I got, I have to figure out a way to get them to win. And if I don't, if not win, to play well enough to win. And if I don't do that, then like we've failed. Then everything I've coached has like failed. And so for him, all these the bench guys and the young dudes making these mistakes and losing this game is like a huge like that to him is like a failure of that word has become so loaded, but it's the process.
It's like the culture. Like this is like a bad sign. Like we built a culture that we don't do this. And it's like, yeah, but the guys playing maybe didn't so much. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just like, and the guys playing knew too. Like everyone in that game knew the deal.
Yeah.
So, he'll be mad today and he'll be mad tomorrow. And then they'll come in for practice on Tuesday and he'll probably be like, all right, like turn the page. Let's go to the Warriors.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
This has become an interesting question. So let's start here because we never got around to covering this for a variety of reasons. Not converting Devon Reed, boy. I don't look. It's Devon Reed, okay. Yeah. He's not a superstar. He's not an all-star. He's not an all-defensive team candidate. He's not going to make $16 million this summer, right? It was so I'm not going to go hyperbole and say like it was disastrous. It was a move that I think was objectively bad and worsened their playoff success odds to not convert him.
I think so too, but like in such a marginal amount that it probably doesn't matter. I've heard some people say like Devon Reed, there's no way he's going to sign with Denver now after they did him dirty like this. And I keep thinking to myself, Denver is sort of always takes care of their guys, and Vlatko and Facu are also their guys. So part of me thinks like, would Devon look at this and feel slighted? Maybe. Or when Denver offers him a deal this summer, if they offer him a deal, it might be a sign of like, hey, yeah, but if you sign this deal, just know we got you. Like you're our guy. You're on the inside. Like maybe you make it back on the back end. That's kind of how I look at it. And also like, he's not a good enough player for me to be like, oh, this is going to swing their title chances.
Here's one. Here's a comparison. Okay. Devon Reed is Szechuan sauce. Okay. There's this show Rick and Morty that brought back a reference to the 1990s Mulan Szechuan sauce that McDonald's offered.
Okay.
And it created this like crave for it to the point where like McDonald's brought it back. But the reason that McDonald's does not continue to have it is because it's not cost efficient towards their overall goals as a company to cater to this entirely small audience for this nice little win, right? The difference of that nice little bump in marketing or whatever else is not significant enough to their overall product. They have a way that they operate with their distributors and everything else, and that's how they construct business. It's kind of the same deal here, where fans are always going to want that Szechuan sauce. They want whatever is going to put them closer to winning. You know what? Will Barton's not playing well right now. Bench him for Austin Rivers. Because they don't like the coaches and the front office are like, you start benching starters willy-nilly and guys start wondering about their job security, and that impacts the locker room and it impacts our relationship with agents over a long enough period of time. Sure, those decisions are made, but you don't do it like you got to ride like I get a lot of comments of you got to ride whoever's hot that night. That's not how this works from a holistic approach. And so I think they should have done it just because unless there is a relationship I am not aware of, I do not like. I understand it would be like a real bummer. The Facu thing's been really has been just depressing, right? Yeah. It's just been depressing. It's like it genuinely is.
Honestly, him going out like this tonight is such a bummer. Like it honestly is, man. Yeah, it really actually really sucks.
Like Facu Campazzo is an incredible competitor. Facu Campazzo is an incredible international player. Like Facu Campazzo has played his ass off whenever he's been on the court. Like there are guys with 10 times the physical tools and talent of Facu Campazzo Campazzo that have failed miserably in the NBA out of simple effort and professionalism. I have nothing but respect for the way that Facu Campazzo has carried himself. And if any of my comments, consistently trollish as they have been,
They were, and they were.
And if any of those comments has disguised the fact that I have nothing but an unending amount of respect for Facu Campazzo as a professional basketball player, then I apologize.
Even I have a hard time buying that part, Matt, but it doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter. I'm watching this replay here as you're talking. The thing that makes this so bad is Wayne Ellington didn't have anything to do with this. Like, Wayne Ellington didn't even foul him. He was upset that he didn't get a foul call on Austin Reeves, and he retaliated by cheap shotting Wayne Ellington. Like, this is a really all-time low way to go out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, guys have been mad at him. Every guy that's played against him has felt like it was it crossed the line. And I think a lot of that is just like, again, I think this is a culture thing of like the way that the NBA works, right? And so if it's on your team, you think it's totally fine. But I don't know. Like, I'm not, honestly, I'll just tell you, like, I'm not in a position to judge that kind of shit. I'm always like, I don't know. Like, I let the play. If the players are all like, no, you don't do that. Like with Grayson Allen, right? The Bucks still stood up for Grayson Allen when everyone else in the league is like, not cool, right? So I don't know how to like dispel it. But yeah, it's a bummer. I think they'll miss Devon Reed. I think they could probably use him. They could really use him in this Warrior series. My next question for you is: let's go through the playoff rotation. So I think Nikola Jokic should probably play. That seems like it's important. Will Barton, Monte Morris, Aaron Gordon, Jeff Green still starts. Okay. Bones. Now what? We got 6. And now what? How deep we going?
Rivers. I mean,
okay. You're gonna need Rivers.
He's a lock. He's a lock. I mean,
especially in the series versus Steph.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, JaMychal Green, man, actually, where do you play these other ones? And one of the things about Golden State is that their best, like, I think even Michael Porter in a theoretical Golden State series would be a little bit of an iffy one, because it might be better if Denver was just a little bit more like switchy on the perimeter. Yeah. And so I think, honestly, what's weird is Jeff Green probably gives you the best chance at that, randomly enough. Austin Rivers might see a lot of minutes alongside Barton and Monte in these like 3-guard lineups. But the one that's tough is Boogie and J-Mike. Like, I just don't know if this is a series. I don't think it is for both of those guys. I don't know that how many minutes we're going to see with both of those two.
I think you can get away with Boogie in non-Steph Kevon minutes. That's the only situation I think you can do
it. Maybe. I mean,
so here's one of the good things about the Warriors. I'll say that, and this kind of relates to the MPJ thing too, and we'll talk about this more in the last segment. But the Warriors don't target guys.
Yeah, they trust who they are
on ball. Now, what they will do is they'll try and get you switched, and then have it be like they're going to try and get you to switch off ball, and either you screw that up or you have somebody who can't do it at all chasing Steph. That's how they kill you. But
it's going to be very easy for them to find that against Denver.
Steph is not going to be like, hey, I'm going to force the switch onto Boogie and I'm going to take him off the dribble and crossover pull up from mid range. That's not what he does, right? He might do that a couple times on layups just because it's easy, right? But it's not at like a Damian Lillard or Chris Paul, like the way Chris Paul hunted MPJ. That's not how the Warriors operate, in my experience. So I think you can probably get. Look, I like J-Mike versus Draymond just in terms of a size and strength matchup. I think that's okay. Their big problem, I think, is just they need size and they just don't have it on the wings. This is why the Devon thing hurts. Is like they need another big guard and they just don't have one. Like, to me, they may have to honestly play like a Gordon. I'm trying to think of like how to do it.
It's just Jeff and Gordon. And like Denver's done this against like their best defensive sequences this year have been when everybody was locked in and the switches, all the little screens they've had. I don't remember what game it was, whether it was Memphis or Golden State, or one of their good defensive outings where those guys were switching and just so connected. Like, they're going to have to be that. So I don't know. The rotation probably gets a little bit tighter than people realize because of that.
Is Bryn Forbes in? Does Bryn Forbes get any minutes in the playoffs? Because Blackburn thinks he's out.
Well, I'm gonna say he gets minutes, but we'll talk about why in the in the next segment.
I see.
Yeah, I
I see.
know.
Yeah, I see. I see where you are. Let's do that. Let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about the matchup versus the Warriors specifically when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I got to say about Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your betting sports stats and info. Made myself some money tonight. I definitely bet the Lakers plus 10 because I knew the Nuggets were resting guys, and I don't trust the Nuggets depth versus any team, especially not a Lakers team with the guys that they have who are actually young and playing for contracts and stuff like that. So I bet Lakers and that cash. I bet Celtics and that cash. I had myself a nice little day. Gonna be looking forward to all the playoff betting at Bet Online. For all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season, BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Adam, over under Nikola Jokic, 28.5 points per game in the first round series. I'll let you think on that, and we'll
Okay.
come back to it next time I do this read this week. How about that?
Okay.
28.5. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet Online, where the game starts. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. You got me on Tuesdays. We're going to be talking about the NBA playoffs and all the first round series and the play-in and all that great stuff. You got Adam on Friday, so he'll be previewing the last play-in games and looking at the playoffs and what's gone on in those great play-in games. I'm so excited for him. It's going to be awesome. I'm so psyched about the playoffs. It's going to be great, and you're going to want to follow it at Locked On NBA. Okay, let's just go ahead and get here. How bad do you think this is gonna be? Because it seems like you think this is gonna be bad.
I don't think it's gonna be good. Like, here's the thing about Denver. They're very solvable. I've said this all year. Like, smart teams can solve Denver. And more importantly, teams that rotate really well can get away with the things it takes to solve Denver. If I'm Golden State, I'm going to sell out on getting the ball out of Jokic's hands. As you asked me about Jokic, 28.5 points, they've got nobody to guard Jokic. But what they do have is smart players who are just going to try to keep the ball out of his hands as best they can and dare other guys to make them against elite rotations. Golden State, when they're locked in, might be number one in the league in rotations. Like, Phoenix is right there because Phoenix is also really good, although Phoenix also has good individual defenders that just keep guys in front of them. But Golden State is like smart in the way they just like recover. And that's the thing I'm worried about. It's not about can Denver hit open shots. It's that Golden State's going to force them to try to drive against scrambled defenses. And to me, that's a very worrisome battle. And then on the other side, you talk about, can Denver get any stops against anybody? Probably not. Well, that's a team that when they start clicking, when they get rolling, they can score a lot of points. So it's not hopeless. This isn't going to be like the Phoenix Sun series. But to me, and there is a huge advantage for Jokic if Denver can find a way to force that to allow Jokic to do that. They're a smart team, and I wish Denver had even Murray back on one leg, because I think it at least would give them a little bit of pause in what should we do, how should we approach this. But without him, it's very simple to solve Denver.
The point of attack thing. I was talking to Chad Andrews on after the game on the Fan, and he asked me about the point of attack, and he was like, "Well, okay, if they shoot so many threes, and the Warriors do, maybe it's not as bad." And I was like, no, because the problem is they're just going to use the lack of perimeter containment to force Denver into rotations.
Yes,
And
they're
that's
gonna
going to result.
they're gonna make Denver have to make lots of reads each time down the court, and Denver's really bad at making reads.
And that's going to
defensively.
result, and that's going to result in corner threes. Like, it's the same problem they had in every game this season, like down the stretch, where it was just like like the Wolves game, and the Spurs game. It was just corner three after corner three after corner three. Like,
Yeah.
You can't allow the most efficient non-rim shot in basketball, especially when, like, Malone's commenting on this, they're not good at the rim either right now.
Right.
Like, their rim defense has gotten worse, in part because they're trying to play Jokic more at the level to apply a little bit more pressure. Like, I'll say that's one of the benefits here. In Steph and pick and roll, he's going to go to Jokic 1-on-1-5, right? They will run that. They will run 1-5 pick and roll. If you blitz Steph Curry the boldest I can possibly bold a parentheses, and you stay attached to him, then that actually works really well. Because Steph's not one of Steph's real weaknesses is passing out of those blitzes. He struggles with it and turns the ball over. Their offense is honestly middling this season. Even when you go back to when the Warriors were whole, their offense wasn't awesome. And a lot of that's because Steph hasn't been Steph this season, right? Like Steph hasn't shot like Steph. He can. He probably will in like 2 to 3 of these games. And the Nuggets are probably going to lose 2 to 3 of these games, right? And if he shoots like that in 4, then I think they're probably done, regardless of how many games it takes.
Yeah.
It's just their combination of they don't have size to contest Klay Thompson and Jordan Poole. They don't have perimeter containment to stop those guys. They're going to have to make rotations. They're going to give up corner threes. And on the other end, honestly, this is the deal. As great as the Warriors defense is, and it is elite, it's so good. You're right on all of those rotations. The one weapon that you would want to have versus this, the one weapon that you could choose to have versus this Warriors offense, quite honestly, I'm not kidding. More than Kevin Durant, I'd rather have Nikola Jokic in this matchup. I'd rather have it because
I just think they're going to sell out against it.
Like, they are. You're right. You're absolutely right. They're gonna send as much help as possible, and they're gonna be like, anybody else beat us. Don't care.
And not from 3. They're not going to dare Will Barton to shoot and make threes. They're going to dare Will Barton to drive and make baskets at the rim.
And they're not going to allow the under the basket cuts that he gets in the regular season, like the Aaron Gordon dunker spot stuff.
They're going to trust their ability to run guys off the line and rotate when off of those defensive breakdowns. And they're really good at it. I mean, here's the thing, Matt. Let's go through the teams. Let's sort the NBA by defensive rating here. Let's look at the best defenses and how Denver did against them. Boston Celtics. Well, we know Denver got murdered by the Celtics. The Warriors. Okay, well, none of these Warriors games this year they weren't that meaningful because there wasn't that much. Phoenix Suns. Of course, smacked Denver, swept them last year. Miami Heat's interesting. They're number 4. That's the one team here that Denver has kind of owned this year and owned a lot. We could talk about them because they're the outlier. Cleveland Cavaliers. Denver went 0-2. Memphis Grizzlies 0-3. Dallas Mavericks 1-2. They're an interesting one. Clippers. We know Denver has had a hard time with them. That the Clippers have this scheme that even shorthanded made Denver work. Toronto Raptors smacked Denver. And then Utah, number 10. That's the 10 defenses. Those are all the teams that you would look at and say, yeah, Denver didn't have success with them, with the exception of the Warriors. And I think you could throw those games out, to some extent. And then what was the other one? The Miami Heat, who, again, I think the one thing for them is that Bam Adebayo is really good against everyone besides Embiid, Towns, and Jokic.
So I'll push back a little bit just to say this. I do think that the Warriors' entire defensive scheme is built to basically combat the modern NBA guard-centric pick and roll. That's like they were the first team to really be like, we're going to go small and we're going to switch everything. They were the first team to start doing that, and they've just jacked with everybody because everybody's like, what do you mean? There's no gap in the pick and roll. The Nuggets don't really do that. So some of their tactical advantages defensively fall off there. If they weren't so good at literally everything else about defense, it would be a bigger problem. My bigger issue, honestly, is the Warriors don't have to be great on offense to generate enough to get past Denver, because Denver's going to score 2s and the Warriors are going to hit 3s. Like, that's to me is like what this is going to be about. It's going to be contested Jokic layups versus open corner 3s.
Could be.
And that combination to me is like, I get worried about like it being like, oh, you actually held them to like a similar shooting percentage and you shot better from the field, but their effective field goal, like they hit 5 more 3s than you. Yeah. Just because, and they're going to dare Aaron. This is the series where Aaron Gordon's going to get there. They will dare Aaron Gordon. That's the one that I think they're going to be like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go for it. Like they will try and get in his head too. Like Draymond will actively try and get in Aaron's head. This is a lot for Monte Morris. This is a lot for Bones Highland. This is a lot. Never mind DeMarcus Cousins in the 8 minutes he's going to play. The only guy I have a lot of confidence in being able to handle this is Joker, and there's only so much you can do versus triple teams. I'm doing all this film work for the MVP thing, and like you're right with the Clippers, because the Clippers were just like, we're gonna make an absolute jungle inside. Like you're just gonna have so many, and we're gonna be able to recover the outside. So It's
Yeah.
tough. If I told you the Nuggets won the series and Steph was healthy, what would you think happened?
Jamal Murray came back
Okay.
and played well.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, and then what's funny is I still haven't ruled that out. I still have not ruled that out. Um, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we got a week. We got a week. We'll see what happens here. And I don't, and again, then you start to say, well, yeah, but how is he going to play on the back? Just having something that makes them guess if their game plan is the right one. That's just what it is. Because the game plan right now is it's Monte Morris, it's Bones Highland, it's Will Barton. But if it's Jamal Murray, I don't know that you really say, hey, pick and roll, stick to yoke. I just don't know if you do that.
I I can't get there, man. If he wasn't able to go for the last regular season game versus the Lakers in like a 15-minute stint
At home.
at home, I cannot see him being condition ready. I just don't think.
Man,
I think
after watching him today, that's the one thing I know he's not is like in good enough shape to go and chase Steph Curry around screens.
yeah, like he's just not there. So I think, you know, look, if they get past the series, sure, we can talk about that then, right? Then maybe the equation changes because it's like, oh, we're on a run, but there has to be some sort of calculus in everyone's head, and then ultimately, and we talked about this, it's Jamal's decision of like, do you really want to come back for 2 games or 3 games and like not look good and have your confidence shaken? Like it could shake your confidence. This is the thing is like regular season games, you can be
I,
like,
I
okay,
think that part's okay though. I don't mind the confidence part of this, just
I worry
because
about it.
I mean and into next year.
I don't want anything to set back a summer. Like
Yeah.
you want it to be nothing but good. You want it to be like, all right, you couldn't make it back last year. And here's the other thing is like he doesn't play. He goes into the summer and it's like he does nothing but he doesn't just have to return from injury. He can actually be like, oh, I'm going to work on my game, right? Because it's like he's actually fully healthy and actually can play, and so
Right.
he can do 5-on-5s and he can do all the work and he can go super hard and be prepared to just like hit the ground running next year. He'll be great shape, great condition, ready to go. You know,
Yeah.
and
Here,
look, that's probably what's going to happen even if he plays in the series. I think I wind up believing that's probably best not to.
here's one other thing. You asked me like if you told me that they won, what would where did my mind go? The only other thing I would say is how many minutes do you think Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green have played together this year?
I'm doing the math in my head.
And by the way, I could end up extending this to say over the last 2 years because that number is obviously the same.
20
Actually, I
minutes,
could say the next 3 years, the last 3 seasons, how many minutes do you think they played together?
20 minutes.
11.
Whew.
So that's one more thing is like they're all good players and they did play together for several years in a row, like they have it. But that's the one question of they really haven't played together. And I think that might surprise people. And maybe there's just a little bit of having to get to know each other again.
You might be right. My only concern is I pay real close attention to like the quotes and comments, and I try and watch the video of the comments too to see what the tone is. That team, the Warriors think they're winning the NBA title.
Of course, they have the right swagger. Somebody's over here says they won a championship. What did I say? Of course, guys. This is called devil's advocate. He's
Yeah,
asking me to play a devil's advocate. I'm not. Of course, I know they won championship. I love the Warriors. Like they're an incredible team.
All right, over under 1.5 wins for Denver.
This is not a lot. I'm not locking this in.
Yeah,
This is my
no. This is
Sunday
it's Sunday.
pre-research. My
It's Sunday.
pre-research
It's
one.
fine.
I would go under.
Okay. Okay.
That might change. I'm hopeful that I see some things in the game tape. It's gonna be even hard to like game tape this one, to be honest, because the games they played against each other this year, I don't think were all that meaningful.
Here's the thing. I think you can piecemeal it together.
Yeah.
Right. I would do it by this is my approach is I'm going to do it by possession and not by game. And the reason I say it, like I'm going to go back and I'm going to pull all the possessions from this year and last year. And what I'll do is I'll compare like, okay, what were the possessions when Draymond was guarding Jokic and what did those look like? And then you just try and kind of like isolate the other things on their own. Like how did the Nuggets guard Steph? How did the Warriors guard
Right.
Will? Right. And like you piece it together because I never care about results in the regular season, but I do care about what matchups look like. And I will tell you, Kevon Looney cannot, like, legitimately, if they're, and I've seen coaches have weird game plans before. If Kerr decides, hey, you know what, we're gonna make him beat us one-on-one, and he puts Kevon Looney, the Joker might literally carry them with like a 60-point game and get them in position to win. That's how much
I would love for them to make that mistake. I just don't see it.
Yeah,
I don't see
I get it.
Draymond smart enough to be like, this ain't working. Like, let's change
Yeah.
up the game plan.
Well, and this is part of it too. Is like, but I will also say this: Draymond's prideful.
Yeah.
Like, he is prideful, and so if they try and that's honestly I think the tougher matchup. But if Joker can figure out a way to beat him, it matters. So, final thing: Nikola Jokic closes as a minus 300 favorite to win his second MVP.
I think he's got it. As somebody, I think it was Swipa was compiling like who's voted where. He says the public ballots like 11 for Jokic, 5 for Embiid, I think 3 for Giannis, first place. So very early, we'll probably start to see more and more of these over the next 48 hours. But I think he's going to win it.
All right, let's get wrap it up for Monday's Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the folks in the chat. Appreciate having you guys along. If you want to be a part of the show, just go to YouTube, search for Locked On Nuggets, subscribe, turn on notifications. Glad to have you with us. Tomorrow, we'll start work on what the Nuggets playoff run is going to look like. We'll get into whatever the latest news is out of the Nuggets camp. I don't think they're going to practice tomorrow. They're going to have an off day, Malone said. Tuesday, they'll probably have practice, and we'll have something to talk about.
I'm very excited for practice, to be honest.
It's going to be great. We'll have coverage for you all throughout the week, getting you ready for the Denver Nuggets taking on the Golden State Warriors in a 3-6 matchup, just like it was in 2013, the first playoff run I ever covered with Denver. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Have yourselves a good night. We'll see you again next time